Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Cronin. I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all. It is time once again for another ResultsLeader.fm. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. You know what we do around here. We talk about how people are getting results out there. That's right. Results are the only thing that matters. That's what we're hearing over and over again. And that's the drum we're going to keep beating on this show. Results are all that matter. How you get them is a different story. That's what we learn on these interviews. The different ways these folks get results for their clients. Today, I've got Mr. Paul Cronin. You're going to see he's an entertaining fella. He helps build teams and set owners free. Let's jump into this interview. Paul, welcome to the show. Good to have you here. Are you ready to start delivering wins for our listeners?
Yes, I am. Thanks for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, brother, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that we're going to talk about your journey. And let's start right here. What book have you given most as a gift?
You know, the number one book that I give as a gift is The 100 Times Leader, How to Become Someone Worth Following. It's written by Jeremy Kubicek and Steve Cockram. And I was introduced to it by a client about 4 years ago. And after I read it, I committed to giving it to all my clients because leadership is so important.
The 100X Leader. I'm adding that to my reading list. Thank you, sir. Let's do story time. Can you tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success?
I'm not a big fan of the word failure. I believe that there's no failure, only feedback is the way I look at things. And so you look at the Navy SEALs, for example, they have a thought of failing forward fast. So they serve as any failure in my mind serves as an opportunity from which you grow and learn. I guess the best example I can give is when I became a turnaround consultant and I was working on my first gig. I was about 90 days into it. I came back to the managing partner of the Platinum Group, Dean Batchelor. I said, Dean, I'm a little bit concerned here. I feel like I'm making a lot of mistakes. And Dean says to me, Paul, if you're not making a lot of mistakes, you're not making enough decisions fast enough. That coaching really changed my life because, you think about thinking too much and the opportunity cost surrounded by thinking too much. And from that point on, I realized decisiveness is really important. So the fear of failure really gets in the way of someone's growth, gets in the way of them breaking through. So I'm a real fan, fail forward fast. And then the other thing that Navy SEALs do really well is called the OODA loop: observe, orientate, decide, and act. But they're always moving forward. They're always making decisions. They understand opportunity cost is greater than the cost of making a mistake. That's really helped me traverse my business over the last 30 years, being the CEO of 5 privately held businesses and being a successful turnaround expert. And then I'm really the expert in dealing with transition planning for family and multiple partner run businesses. I don't know too many people out there who've actually stepped into that quagmire and worked with those people. But if you're worried about failing, you really can't do that job very well.
There's people out there that I feel like you're saying you're from the school of ready, fire, aim. Like we're firing and then we'll figure it out. We'll get our bearings straight. But what do you say to those people out there that really they're stuck with the ready, fire, aim, like step 1, step 2, step 3, afraid of making moves? Like how do you help them break out of that?
Again, it depends on how stuck they are in that thinking. I have a new client that started in November. They're a manufacturing company, and the supply chain is really messed up right now. And for the first time in maybe the history of supply chains, the supplier to the original equipment manufacturers, referred as OEMs, they have more power, and they've never had that power before. It's like they've taken the master's whip away, and they're no longer subservient. And I'm teaching them to think differently about it. I said, listen, this is the opportunity. And by the way, if you don't raise prices and hire people at a higher wage, you're never going to survive because these people are going to go work someplace else. And so it's been 7 months since we started with them. And I've helped them understand the need to think differently and act differently and not be afraid to go stand up to the quote unquote purchasing agents out there whose job is to keep price down. So that's one example. It's as a coach, that's probably my most important challenge with people. And so I help them understand that you never know when you're going to break through. You don't know how far away you are from a breakthrough. It could be right in front of your nose, or it could be 10 feet away or a mile away. When you quit, you give up, you never broke through. It's not until you break through that you realize you broke through. And helping people work with their mindsets is so critical. Now, it's interesting about coaching. I can't help everybody. You can be the best coach in the world, but if a person doesn't have desire and willingness and then commitment to follow through, you can't help them. But if they show up with desire and willingness, that means they're open to new ideas. They're open to a different risk profile. And with that, I'm able to help them think differently and move forward. I hope that makes sense to you.
Let's just continue on this path here. And so I heard you say that they have to come to you with that open mindset or that beginner's mind. They don't have all the answers and be open to finding new answers. And what I'm wondering is, when they come looking for you, are they coming looking for you saying, hey, I need a new mindset, or are they asking other questions?
When I get a referral from a CEO to another CEO, it's generally because they know each other and the one looking has said, hey, I'm stuck. When I talk to my network out there who helped me find those CEOs, I say all they need to do, the only thing that has to happen is they're stuck on something. And if they recognize they're stuck and they want to get out of being stuck, then I'm able to help them. But if they think that if they're a do-it-yourselfer, what I call the hero-led business, then there's no helping that type of person. So they usually come with an open mindset. I have made mistakes where I have engaged clients, even though I thought I had done all my questioning, and found out after working with them for a short period of time that they didn't have the desire and willingness to actually be open-minded. And I've had to terminate those relationships. It's happened a couple of times in 14 years, but I try to, in my flywheel model, that's my second step, is really evaluating whether they have the desire, the willingness, and the commitment. And at that point in time, I'm willing to go forward.
Let's talk about investments, brother. What is the most worthwhile investment that you have ever made?
It's in people. My purpose in life is to be a catalyst for change in people, teams, and organizations to help them get to the place they otherwise could or would ever believe they could get to. So my goal has been seeking wisdom, and that's the most worthwhile investment in me first. And then I have to turn around and provide what I can to those people who are looking to grow and learn. So investing in people and teams and organizations is the best investment I've ever made, because that's how God made me. I mean, he put me here to pour into people that are open-minded and willing to grow and learn. And when that matchup happens, it's an amazing feeling. Learning, changing, growing, and then taking that and turning around and pouring into people and teams that want to do the same.
Okay, so that was the part, because I was going to ask you about the seeking wisdom. So how do you seek wisdom?
Someone taught me, this lady who was a coach to me many years ago, she said, Paul, wisdom comes at the end of the learning trail. And I said, explain to me. So, well, the first thing is learning, right? You open up a book, you go to school, and that's academic learning. And then you apply that learning in life. You say, okay, I just learned something. I just read this great book, 100X Leader, right? Now I go and I apply it. And so now I'm mixing metaphors. I'm putting on my skates and my skis for the first time. And if I'm going to be a great skier or a great skater, I need to realize I'm going to fall down along the way. And so I'm applying that learning. And as I'm applying it, I'm gaining understanding. I'm gaining understanding around balance and what I should and shouldn't do. And the more I apply it, the more I fail forward fast, if you will. And through that feedback loop, I'm getting feedback. And through that, the mistakes that I've made, I've gained wisdom. Because wisdom is at the end of failing forward fast, taking that information, regurgitating it and changing along the way. So you have to be malleable. You have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible. And you have to want that and realize that. Not very many people are able to do that. But again, for those who are seeking that, they'll get there eventually. But it's a forever journey, right? It's not the end of the trip that matters. It's the journey along the way that we learn. And that's where the wisdom comes from.
We just got to see. I don't know if anybody was paying attention and heard everything you said, but you did give us a secret to wisdom. It's embedded in this episode. People go back, rewind, listen. You gave us a simple formula for that. So thank you. And let's have some fun. What are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise?
when people continue to do the same thing over and over again, seeking to be perfect, it has to be perfect. No, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's what I learned from Dean Batcher. Momentum over perfection is one of my favorite phrases, particularly when I start working with a client who's been doing things the same way over and over. And I said, I'll say things, you need to learn to gut it out. You need to learn momentum over perfection. And this is to my engineering friends, particularly those who have the mindset about having to dot every I and cross, or the attorneys out there, or maybe even the accountants. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to get someplace fast, you have to gut it out, get momentum, and then do that OODA loop feedback. And I have to do it to myself. But a lot of people have that hero-led business thing too. So that's the second thing. Not only does it have to be perfect, but I'm the only one who can do it. Or, no one does it as well as me. Well, then you're stuck forever. Another one is, we can change that person, or I can change that person. Well, I'm going to stick with them. They'll come around. And one of the things I teach my CEO clients and then their leaders is that you need to build a team of A players and then teach those other leaders to do the same. Because A players historically outperform B players who, by 300% or more. And the difference between an A player and a B player is the fact they both have the same values and the same beliefs. So they belong inside your culture, but the B player gets stuck. I call them a turtle on a post. The turtle can't fly, they can't climb. So you have these turtles on posts, we put them there, and then we leave them there. And that's torture, and it's costly. So there's a cost in business to ignore that turtle on a post because they're not performing as an A player. And when you put an A player in there and they perform at 3 times that B player, that's that opportunity cost I was talking about. So the idea, and by the way, you can go back to Dr. Ram Shriram, wrote an article in June Fortune magazine, 1999, where he studied the most iconic CEOs and the number one reason why they failed. And it was because they didn't have the right people in the right seats. And the catch was they knew it and they didn't do anything about it. So imagine the best CEOs in the world make that mistake. What do you think it is when I'm talking to CEOs and leaders of 20 million, 50 million, $100 million companies? They definitely are making the same mistake. So that's probably the biggest bad recommendation, is that we can change that person. We can get them to A, but they really don't have the skills or the abilities to get them. Let me do the last one. I don't need a coach. So if you look at sports as a metaphor, the best athletes in the world have coaches. The best golfers have coaches. The best hockey players, the best basketball, they all have coaches. So why do CEOs and business owners think that they can figure it out on their own? That's the other bad advice. So you can do this on your own. You can self-implement this thing. And I would say, no, that's going to be a slow road, whereas you could accelerate the speed and growth and achievement much faster with someone who can see around corners and give you the feedback you need to move forward.
That's it, isn't it? You're buying perspective. That's the beauty of a good coach.
All right, we're about to get into the results portion of the show, but before we do that, I gotta ask you, have you shared the show? If you're digging what I'm laying down here, then I want to ask you to share this show with somebody who will find it helpful. Share it on your social medias. Use the hashtag ResultsLeaderFM, and I'll be looking for you out there. Thank you.
Why do results matter?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really all that matters. I mean, if you show up to work and you don't get done what you are supposed to get done, you're not moving forward. I mean, results are what provides us the feedback and the measurements of our output. I mean, again, using sports as a metaphor, I'm a hockey player, right? I've been a hockey player my whole life. And over the years, they started evaluating wins and losses and points and assists and so forth. But one of the number one, I remember when there was a gentleman from Minnesota who left to play for Buffalo, and he got the biggest contract ever because of his plus-minus score. He had more pluses, and he had like 30 pluses for being on the ice, which meant that when he was out there, good things happened for the team versus having a negative score where they didn't, as a liability. So output is measured, and the only way we get those results and get feedback on those results is measuring that. If you're not doing what you said you're going to do, what value are you bringing to yourself or to the organization?
Number one, you must not be very good at hockey because I see all your teeth in. Just teasing. Nobody will see that because we're going to use audio, but that was for us. Now let's think back over the last 5 years. What new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. It starts in the people area. And in the people area, the talent area is a big area. And the first thing in talent is structure. When I come into an organization, I realize I can see very quickly that they don't have the right structure to allow progress to happen rapidly. And then they don't have the processes to support the structure. So even before we start talking about the talent, whether an A player, a B player, or a C player, it starts with having the right structure to allow high performance to happen. And I'll give you one of the best examples is General Stanley McChrystal, very recent one. So he wrote the book Team of Teams, and he changed military history of 1,000 years of top-down command and control, because what was happening is ISIS was kicking the butts of the best military in the world, the United States military over in Iraq. And he realized that the reason was because they were so fast. They were in and out. To tell the operator out in the field, hey, wait till I get a decision from the president whether you can take the shot or not, was ridiculous, because they were already done. They did their damage and they left. And all they were doing was wreaking havoc. And so McChrystal realized he had to push the decisions out and down to the operators in the field. And that's the same thing in business. Edward Deming taught that way back in the 60s and 70s when General Motors and those companies in the car industry wouldn't listen to him. So he went to Japan, and they were open-minded and said, yeah, we want to beat the American auto industry. What can you teach us? And so he went to Japan and he taught them, push the decisions down to where the activity is happening and empower them, hire great people, make sure there's super data and communication, and empower them to make decisions. And that's the two things that you need to have to allow that to happen. Three things. You have to have great people that are operators. You have to provide them the data in a timely, accurate, precise data in a timely manner. And then you have to communicate consistently. And that happened with NASA when they built the space program back in the 60s. It happened with the automobile industry in Japan with Edward Deming. And McChrystal did it out in Iraq when he created a team of teams and pushed the information down to the operators so they could make the decision.
So you're a fan of the military. It sounds like, is that the decentralized command? Like I'm sure you read Extreme Ownership, decentralized command leading from the chain down and up and all that kind of.
I am a big fan of Jocko. Extreme Ownership and the Dichotomy of Leadership. You asked me what my one book was, right? But you notice those two are also on leadership.
Yeah,
right?
They are.
So that's the second book I have them. I also have them read a lot of Pat Lencioni's books too, around team health and taking the stripes off and being open and honest with each other, providing the feedback. Because if you have an ego in the way, you're not going to learn. And that's what I love about the SEALs is there's no ego. The stripes come off, they give each other feedback, and they grow and they learn. And again, that's how you get to wisdom, going back to the beginning of the conversation.
What area of your business would you like better results?
You can be the best coach in the world. I'm not saying that I am, but I'm pretty good at coaching. You can be the best in the world, but if you don't have the skill sets and the capabilities to have conversations with CEOs, then you're never going to grow. And it's not a sales issue. I just did a survey with 100 coaches. Most of the coaches believe that if they get in a conversation with a CEO, they'll engage that CEO 50% of the time in an engagement. It's getting that opportunity. It's getting to the plate to swing the bat. It's marketing. It's lead generation. If you could do one thing for the coaching community, that would be creating a lead generation system such that they had more opportunities to talk to CEOs, and knowing their skill sets and what they provide. Mostly, again, at least good 50% of them will say, yes, let's get engaged.
What results are you most proud of?
The one that comes to mind was my first business transition planning situation. So I had been a coach providing an operating system, and I was working with this trucking company. And Todd lets me talk about this because he's so proud of it himself, is that third generation, we used to kid, he was the accelerator and his dad was the brake. And when Todd got involved, he took this company from 5 million to 30 million. When I got to know him, it was time for dad to retire. But as it says in the Bible, a prophet doesn't get any credit in his own hometown. Well, it's the same in a family business. Most of the time, a third generation person is not really going to be a great performer. But in this case, Todd was and still is. But the mom and dad know him too well. They raised him. They know all his warts. And they were really nervous about letting go of the business because their whole future. They were only 60 in their early 60s. Their whole future was ahead of them. How were they going to survive? Their son, tank it and put it in the ground? And over the course of time, I took them through oh, by the way, when I found this out, I was talking to Todd and I said, where are you going? He goes, well, I'm going to have a meeting with my financial advisors. I said, really, when? This afternoon. I said, about what? About mom and dad transferring the business to me. I said, how long have you had this conversation? Oh, we're going on 4 years. I said, are you getting anywhere? He said, no. You got the accountant, you got the attorney, you got the financial advisor, you got the tax advisor, and they're all in there trying to bring the big stick and be the big ego in the room. I said, Todd, you trust me? And he said, yes. I said, let me take you through a process of working with your mom and dad and you and your wife, taking you through a process of understanding what they want, what you want, what the company needs. And within 9 months, we got the deal done. I was sitting in the office over in Hudson, and about 45 minutes later, Todd came to the office, and I'm like, hey, man, what's up? And he couldn't talk. He was all choked up. The interesting thing is that I never thought this was going to get done. You helped us get this done. You changed my life. You changed their life. And so that was probably the biggest thing that happened up until that point in time. I followed that up with another opportunity with 6 equal partners. They were trying to do a recapitalization of their software as a service company. They were 18% each. They all wanted different things. And I worked through that, and I won't go into the long story of that. But then I also did 4 equal partners, where one of the partners, who was a cowboy early on, and that cowboy attitude grew them fast when they were young, became a real negative when they got to be 60 million. And he could no longer fit into the culture. And for 6 years, they struggled with that. And again, within 6 months, I was able to help them solve that problem. So those 3 things are all in the space of business transition planning, which very few people understand what that is. But you're wading into the emotions, the ego, the feelings of partners and families and so forth, getting in the way of getting something really great done. And it's a very, very challenging thing to do, but I have an incredible process that works. So those are probably three of the biggest things I've ever done in my business career.
Any parting thoughts you'd like to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
As a leader, you need to work on yourself first. That's what the 100X leader teaches us, to look in the mirror and identify and be honest, where do I need to grow first? And the X is then you multiplying other leaders. Another book that's really good is The Motive by Pat Lencioni, where people want to become CEOs and they get there and they're still doing strategy work or marketing work, and they're not really being the CEO and doing the job of the CEO. And the question is, what's your motive for doing what you do? So I would just ask leaders to first look in the mirror and understand their motives for what they're trying to accomplish. And if you're a leader, that means you have to work on yourself to become great so you can help others become great. And you got to put your ego aside and really focus on them. And then the second thing would be to help them build teams, because individuals don't win games. Look at Jordan Spieth. He's a golfer, but he always says we and my team, right? Which I really appreciate because I love golf too. And people think it's an individual sport, but he's actually helped people realize it's not an individual sport. There's a head coach, there's a swing coach, there's a nutrition coach. So there's a team of people. So work on yourself, pour into others, build teams.
I know our listeners are going to want more. Where can they go to get more from you?
Well, my website is cornerstone3inc.com or cornerstone3.com. So you can reach me there. And then on LinkedIn, you can connect with me at Paul Cronin on LinkedIn. If you want my email address, it's paul.cronin@cornerstone3inc.com.
There you go. We will have links to everything in the show notes. Thank you for being with us, Paul. And thank you, results leaders, for tuning in. Another one is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of resultsleader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to resultsleader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.